Well, hello again. Here we are back in Vermont in the North Country, and we're taking up the last part of the padding of the body and the foot joint. I'm going to take from this section here, which is felts, corks, and connections, and take you through the last part of this, which is setting up the flute and getting it ready to play. Final adjustments, set up sequences, and all that. It's in the course notes for the flute padding, but it's probably even more confusing than anything. So it's probably best to start here and look at how things look when you're reading the course notes. It can be too detailed with technical terms and stuff. So what I've got is a flute with the Haynes flute that I was polishing in the previous demonstration. I polished this flute, and now it has all the pads installed, and I'm pretty happy with how they cover. I can see the smallest, tiniest leak with Schmidt pads. When I put the light inside the flute, I have a fluorescent light, and I have this on a foot switch, so anytime I want to see what it looks like, I can turn it on and put the light inside the flute. And that's excellent for finding the smallest leaks. It's also excellent for checking the timing, the exact connection of the time when one pad touches and the other is still open. So that sort of question is what we'll be dealing with in this section of the work. Now what I've done is I've glued in little pieces of plastic into the places where there are connections. So you see here on this Haynes flute, there is the clutch for the D key to press the F sharp key. And then under this arm here is another piece of plastic I've glued in there with shellac. And when I close the D key, the E key, it presses down on the F sharp key. The F key connection, F to F sharp connection, is here at the back connection. I've cut a thin piece of cork, and it's very thin, and you have to try a few times before you find just the right thickness. But if you do that, you can get to the point where it's almost perfect. Of course, you want it a little too thick, so we'll be sanding that connection and the other two until they time out perfectly with the F sharp key. But first, I just wanted to show you where the cork and the felts go, and at this point what that looks like. So there's a piece of felt here on the bottom of the back connection, which is oversized, and there's a piece of cork on the top of the back connection for the F to F sharp and the F to B flat right there. When it's together, that's how the F to B flat makes its connection here on that part. There are no screw adjustments on the Haynes flute. You do everything with clutches. There's another piece of plastic glued in underneath the A key right here. You can see that. It's a piece of black plastic I glued there with shellac. And each of those pieces are a little too thick. And that's intentional. I want to be able to sand when I put the flute together and check for the leak. I want to sand this with a very tiny strip of sandpaper and keep checking until I get the timing of these two keys or the others, whatever one we're working on, to be perfectly together. Now you can see on the B flat kicker, I've got a thin piece of cork, and that's glued on here, oversized, and I'll trim that up with a blade so it's flush with the sides of the keys. There's also a piece of cork on the underside of the G-sharp lever, and that one looks pretty thick actually, but it's a good idea to have something that's thicker than you need, because if you cut it too thin and you dry it, it's too thin, you have to tear it off and make another one and wait for it to dry. So that'll be later. And then on the B flat thumb key, there's felt on both ends, and that's oversized as well. It's too thick on both ends, and it's oversized to the key. And so I'll use a blade and trim these parts to get them to be flush with the edges of the keys, and you can watch that happen now. Yep. I hope I'm not obscuring your view. You're right there over my left shoulder. This is a new setting for the camera. I hope this works better than what I've been using in the past. So you see I'm pulling the blade and shearing off. Don't just kind of go straight across, but use an angle and draw the edge of the blade across the felt. The metal part of the key is acting as a guide for the blade. I got the blade right up against the edge of the casting there, so it comes out flush with the edge. I hope I'm not in the way. I don't know if you can hear that woodpecker out there whacking on the tree. That's his call to establish his territory. Sometimes he uses the cover of my emergency generator, which is metal. And doesn't that make a racket, though? He's got a hard bill, a hard head. We've got a motion sensing floodlight over our entry door, and every spring Mama Robin sets up her nest over that light fixture. She likes it because she's out of the rain, she's very well protected. But every time we use our back door, or go out or come back or drive the car, and she has to fly away, she sits up in the tree and scolding us. You're bothering my hand, my little eggs. So I use contact cement, barge contact cement. It's in the kit. And it's important to know that when you use barge cement, to put a little bit of the cement on the felt and a little bit on the key. Spread it over evenly all over, and set the timer for 15 minutes. or just look at your watch. And after 15 minutes, while it's been lying there with both pieces drying in the air, stick the two parts together and boom, they are attached. It's very good adhesive. It's a rubberized adhesive. So they use it for repairing shoes, I think. Even that's strong enough to hold your shoes together after they've been damaged. So I'll come back to the thumb key. I need to fit it to the B key, the B thumb key. But I want to finish trimming first. Now, usually I don't make a cut which is perpendicular to the edge. I usually put an angle on it, undercut a little bit, so that it's not a perfectly straight, flat edge down from the surface. So this little kicker hangs down over the back of the thumb key, like that. And that piece of cork on there adjusts the connection between the thumb B flat and the thumb key, B flat key up here. The timing is adjusted there. But I'll show you later, it's also adjusted by slightly bending this key. If you need to, this is quite okay to bend slightly this key up or down to make that timing adjustment come out just perfect. Because sometimes this cork looks like it's going to get so thin, to get the connection right, there's going to be nothing left. So that's why we have to be able to make that adjustment at this long lever, and it's a very long piece of silver. It's not going to hurt anything to just change the angle on this key a little bit by bending it. And I always make a point of telling my students, you never bend anything, you adjust the key. That's not the same as bending. Bending's not good. Yeah, I changed to a new blade there because that one was getting pretty dull. So this is doing a good job. Usually I have to take a little bit out of the back of this felt here. This this corner in here, this corner in the back, you usually take a little bit out of there because assembling and disassembling, I find that that will catch on a spring. And if that happens often enough, it'll pull the felt off eventually. So remove that corner with an angle to get it right flush with the edge of the key. Now there's some hanging over the back side here. Well, you know, my previous lecture or demonstrations, I've had my radio going in the background here. I listen to my Pandora selections, and it's wonderful because they always play only the music that I like. But when I uploaded the last lecture, I got a notice from YouTube that says there's been a copyright violation on your tape, and we're going to correct that by deleting it from your sound. So I understand that some of the sound from that lecture was deleted. So that's the reason there's no sound going on, and that's in the background here. I don't want to get into a conflict with many big companies. That would be tough. So I think that does it for trimming and for gluing and establishing the way we can go forward now. I'm going to put the right hand section on here and adjust the D, the E, and F sharp to the F sharp connection. These three keys are connected to the F sharp key. The right way to do this is to use either plastic or paper in the clutch, and felt, and or best would be cork in the connection area. If it's too thick, so if it's too thick, then you have room to sand it and to bring it down to exact fit. So you can see with the light inside the flute, when I press the F key, F not down all the way. When I press the E key, E is not down all the way. Even F sharp is down. Press the D key, D is not down all the way. So that's where you want to be to start with this adjustment process. Now if you're working on a student model flute, you've got a screw for the F to F sharp someplace around here. You've got a screw somewhere around here for E to F sharp, and another screw for the D to F sharp. Just turn those screws until you get a perfect timing between those the two keys that you're adjusting. That makes things so much easier to have those beautiful little screws, but most players think of those as lower class, inexpensive, cheap student flutes, and they are. That's right, they're lower class, cheaper student flutes. But I think that the best design is to have screw adjustments, and I do that myself, but nobody'd want to have a flute like that. I think they would say, this is just student flute. Now I'm looking for some coarse sandpaper. I know I made some. Well, here it is. Uh-oh. My connection fell out. I guess the shellac wasn't dried. Oh, yeah. Well, that's what happens when you're in a hurry. Just can't wait for this thing to get done. So I'll come back to it tomorrow or something. I'll leave it for now. You know, I haven't found a really good adhesive for holding plastic to silver. There are so many kinds of adhesives, but gosh, I haven't yet found one that sticks very well. The spring catches in here for the Haynes flute really make it difficult to assemble, disassemble. They're so close together, and you have to take them off before you take off the right hand keys. They force you to do that because they won't come off until you take off the springs and the spring catches. So, piece of coarse sandpaper, just a strip. Put it underneath the key and with the sandpaper up against the cork, and pull it out. And as you put pressure on it with one hand, kind of putting pressure on the sandpaper by closing the key, then pull it out, and don't pull it out all the way, just pull it out a little bit. So it sands the whole bit of the job there. And check. Well, I got some more to go. Almost perfect. I'm going to stop just before I'm just right. Because I know if I get it just right, when I put the left hand keys on here, then it's not going to be just right. So the B flat key is over adjusted. It's touching and the F key is wide open. So going back to the back connection with the sandpaper, do the same thing I did on the F to F sharp, only this time F to B flat. You got to keep the key open so you have room to put your sandpaper in there, okay? Still over adjusted. See that? They're open. Still over adjusted. Get this in a place where you could see this. Now I've been using a pretty coarse sandpaper. That's a 320 sandpaper. Okay, now it looks like the F sharp and the B flat are down, but the F is still open. So I took off enough so the B flat key is down, almost down exactly with the F sharp key. So I'm going to change to finer sandpaper to sand the rest of the way. I really don't want to go overboard. I want to go past my goal, tear off the cork and start over. So this will take some time, but that's okay. Once it's done for good. See, I'm doing both of those keys now. Both B flat and F sharp cork at the same time with a fine sandpaper. No, you can't see that. The B flat's still over adjusted. F sharp looks like it's just about right. wish that wire was longer. Now you can see it. If you don't have a light to put inside your flute and you don't have Schmidt pads, use the feeler. The feeler will tell you whether the timing is identical or if it's over or under adjusted. And it'll also tell you if there are any new leaks. Because, as I said in my notes, it's inevitable. You will find more leaks after you think you got the pads just right. But now we're working with pushing this key and this key by this key. And that's different. Just going around and feeling for leaks when you're pushing on the key itself, that's different than when, as you would play the flute, you're pressing the F key. Okay, seems to be a small leak now from like 6 to 9 on the F key. If I put the light on there, I'll verify what I'm telling you. Okay, there's just a little more to do on the F key. I've got half thousandths shims, so I'm not going to take the time now to do that while you're watching. I'm just going to do that later. I wanted to get through this as much as quickly as possible so you know what you're doing better than just by reading the notes. So the last part of this, right. The end of this, if I can find my steel, where's the screw ball? There it is. We're going to put the B flat thumb and the B key on, just put it on the steel for now and see how they match, because the felt is too thick. This felt is really hard and thick. You see how big that is? Way too big. And I do that intentionally because I don't want the flute to change over time. And if you use that fluffy felt that they sell in some places, it's going to change over time. So what I want to do, looking at this from the end view of the cup, there's a bit of a radius across here, and it goes down to the edge of the cup. I'm going to try to duplicate that with a blade and cut off the felt so that it matches the shape of the cup from here all the way out to there. Too dull. Oh, yeah. Okay. Now try that. See how it fits. Okay. Way too thick in the back here. Very end there, it's still too thick. Much too thick. And that wind has been blowing like crazy all day. Almost done. It's still a little high in back. Right in the very back. Yeah, this felt is really hard. So the goal is to get the two plates, top surfaces, the B flat and the B, to be fairly level with each other. And right now that's sticking up too far and doesn't really have the same curvature either. But I can't do anything about that. That looks better now. So I would like to sand that so it's more or less takes the contour of what's touching all the time. And protect the finish with the tape and do a little sanding. Yeah, that looks great. Got some glue hanging out there. Okay. Don't go all the way through. Okay. Felt too thick. Feels too thick in the back. So I'm going to take off some of that. very thin. Go in the hole. Thank you. Still too thick. Well, I have to do this again. Come on. Okay, now it's moving. That's way over adjusted for the B-flat thumb. So this piece of cork on the back here needs to come off a little bit. Can't get the sandpaper in there. So let's work on the felt underneath. Let's see if I can make that thinner so I can get a little more room to move. Try this. Alright, I'll take the whole thing off. Good enough. Let's start over. So I'm sanding the cork underneath the B-flat kicker to get this adjustment right. Well, it's still over adjusted. Almost there. It's taking a long time. Yeah. So we'll check it with a feeler. It grabs there. And it grabs there. So the connection is done. And I lost my felt underneath this key, and it's right down on the body of the flute. So that's a problem. I'm going to have to revise a little bit this key to make it thinner so that it's not like that. Okay, so I've covered the basic connections and the kickers for the felt underneath the F key and underneath the back connection, and felt underneath both sides of the thumb key. You know, I could probably make this felt a lot thinner, and that would give me room for more felt back here. So that's what I'll do next. The one thing that I haven't checked yet is the pad opening at the F key. We set the opening of the F key to 125 thousandths. And so you can do that with your caliper if you have one that reads up to 3 decimal places. There's 125. We'll set the lock. Stay there. Now we'll measure the F key and say, oh, it's not opening enough. All right. So put a piece of tape on the body underneath the back connection. And we're going to sand that felt until we get 125 thousandths. So I've got a gauge which shows me the right openings for all of the different numbers. There's 125, there's 135, and there's 100. So I can easily, without damaging the pad or anything, I can check it this way. See that? Can you see that's too close? It's probably out of focus. No, it's good. So I can sand this felt, just sand off some some of that material until I get an opening, which is exactly 125 thousandths. And if you have any quarters in US currency, 2 quarters together is the right thickness. Use it as a gauge. You can use 2 quarters to check the thickness of the opening of the front of the F key. Oh, that did it. Now my gauge is just slipping under there. Alright, can you see that? Now that F key opening, 125 thousandths, will set all of the other keys to the right height when we add cork to the back on the kickers of each of these keys. And the G key is not interconnected with the others, but the A key will be. Obviously the B flat key is, and the thumb key. These are all interconnected by the axles that go through the hinges. So when you're ready to do the corks on the back of the kickers, you'll put a piece of cork on there that's too thick initially, and then sand it like I did before with a piece of Scotch tape underneath there with sandpaper, and sanding that cork until you get the right opening. And you have to remember, this is a couple thousandths thick, so stop short of perfect and take off the tape and check for backlash. The backlash is always going to be, okay, if I pretend that there's a piece of cork in here that's too thick, the backlash is always going to be here with the F key, because the cork is holding each of these. For example, it's holding the E key too closed until you sand it until it's just right, but initially there's going to be backlash at the F key until you sand the felt, until you sand the cork until it's gone. So backlash always goes back to the F key, with the exception of the G keys because they're not connected. So I've gone quite a long time. I think I'll stop here and take a break, and if possible I might come back and finish up later. Okay.